Man cannot perceive wisdom. He cannot understand its meaning, because the basic keys to his knowledge are still unknown to him. In 1880, this parcel of land in southern India near Madras was purchased by a Russian woman, a woman who dreamed of the day when people from different parts of the world will gather here under one roof to support each other in their search for wisdom and truth, to discover their inner power and provide a service to humanity by fighting against ignorance, to lessen the burden of suffering in the world through the dissemination of divine wisdom. This world-famous woman was an enigmatic person, even for those who thought they knew her well. For some, she was a great being who succeeded in reaching the highest levels of wisdom and illumination, a woman who explored new paths in the development of humanity. For others, she was a heretic who advocated the eradication of all religious creeds. There were those who saw her as an example of mercy and compassion. Others thought her ruthless. Some referred to her as a woman of endless patience. To others, she was known for her explosive anger. It seems that there were no emotional or personality traits lacking in the complex personality of this woman. In Russia, her land of origin, for decades her name was clad in secrecy, rumors, and mystery. She was born in 1831 in Ekaterinslav, in this house. Her mother's family was of an old and noble Russian ancestry that could be traced to Prince Dolgorsky. Her father's family descended from German nobles who settled in Russia and served the Tsar. Her mother, Helena Gun, was a famous and gifted writer. She gave birth to two talented daughters. One of them, Vera, would also become a writer, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. The eldest, Leola, was a clever and highly imaginative child. But her mother always felt that her destiny would be a difficult one, that she would suffer greatly throughout her life.
I am Lola. That was my nickname. My full name is Helena Petrovna. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. How strange it is to return to the place where one is born. It's been more than 160 years. Everything has changed. Except for the house itself, its walls, the air around it. It seems like spring now. Has the time finally come for me to tell all that really happened in my life? It has always been a source of great bitterness and despair for me to know that in my motherland, the motherland that I loved so much and felt such homesickness for all my life, that my name was trampled on and associated with so many lies.
Who are you, Madame Blavatsky?
How do you describe the moment in your life when you hear an inner voice calling you to your destiny? How do you describe changes so transcendental that you suddenly realize that everything in life is an illusion, that everything we cannot see is, in truth, our reality?
This land, now starting down the path, it is but a sad emissary, trod behind gates that block the way into the valley of the light, a light which cannot be extinguished by any storm. Before you step onto the path, you must eliminate all your desires, cleanse your mental body, purify your heart. You cannot follow the path without giving yourself completely to it, without actually becoming the path yourself. It is the only possible way, and at the end of the path, you will hear the voice of silence.
I heard the voice calling me toward a mysterious horizon that held the promise of secret knowledge. It seemed to me that I did not belong to myself. Perhaps my behavior seemed irrational to others, sometimes even hilarious. You can ask the eyewitnesses, such as my dearest cousin, Sergei Bishevit. In his biography of me, he described in a very interesting way a number of the episodes in my life. Ask him about me.
Helena Petrovna was married very young. Her husband was an elderly man, a decent man, Blavatsky, a governor-general of the Yerevan region in Armenia. Only a year after her marriage, she left her husband and fled to her grandfather in Tbilisi. Her grandfather, distressed by this turn of events, sent Helena Petrovna to her father in St. Petersburg. She was traveling with her servants when she arrived at the Black Sea. Here she made arrangements to board an English ship bound for Constantinople. There she found work as a circus rider. A famous singer of the time, named Mitrovich, fell in love with her. She left the circus and went with him to Europe. While in Europe, she became the assistant to a famous spiritualist medium named Hume, and with him traveled throughout Europe and America.
O pupil, view is long and difficult. Your past sorrows will pull you backward, and you will have to retrace your steps and start again. Let go of the memories of past trials and tribulations. Don't look back, or you will fail. Fix your attention upon the teacher whom you cannot yet see, but already anticipate.
Well, my dear cousin has told you some absorbing and spectacular things about me, especially about my being a circus rider. How could he even imagine such a thing? I was not a very slender girl, not even as a child. I was brave and daring, but not enough to put on tights and sit on the back of a trotting horse. He could have told also about how I fought with the troops of Garibaldi, or how I was wounded in battle and would have died had it not been for a miracle, or how I offered my... I'm truly disappointed with your memoirs, my dear, dear cousin.
Our cousin is simply repeating family legends. He was a small boy at the time and didn't really know any better.
Oh, Vera, my protector, Vera, my darling. Let me introduce you to my sister, Vera Petrovna Blavatsky. You can trust what she says.
I understood Leola's aspirations. Her actions were not those of a crazy girl. There was much more to them. I remember once when we had a guest who came to visit our grandfather, the magnificent and enigmatic Prince Golitsyn. It was known that he was a Mason and a mystic. Leola talked with him for over 3 hours, and he answered all of her questions as if he had been talking with one as learned as himself. What effect did this conversation have on her? Perhaps she learned about a mysterious spiritual brotherhood which existed somewhere in the world. Or maybe he told her about the Rosicrucians and their ancient and secret magic rituals. This was the first time that Leola felt that she had heard the voice of her destiny. She decided then she would go in search of that knowledge. But she needed to be free to pursue that dream. That is why she married Blavatsky and then left him a year later.
Perhaps Vera is right. I sensed the mystery and rushed to find it. I felt there had to be a place on earth where pure knowledge was safely guarded. Knowledge about the universe, about God and man. From the teaching of Catholic missionaries, I learned that within one of the great mountains of the Himalayas there was a city of eternal light, a kind of paradise where saints lived, those masters who chose not to move on to eternal bliss in order to continue to help humanity here on earth. I was sure I could reach that place, overcoming all obstacles in my way. And that is what led me to India and the remote mountains of the Himalayas.
From the beginning, man has often not recognized the truth and, instead, has opted for the lies. So true knowledge has been hidden. Now, who has true knowledge? The great teachers from the snowy mountains. O teacher, what must I do in order to attain wisdom? O wise man, what must I do in order to reach perfection? Search for the path, but be pure in your heart before you begin your journey. Before taking the first step, learn to distinguish the difference between rational knowledge and the wisdom in your heart. You must learn the difference between the teachings of the senses and the teachings of the heart.
The teachers, or gurus, instruct the student, or chela, on the different methods of psychic development based on the extraordinary potential of the human mind. That which to the European seemed a mirage, a fantasy or hoax is the subject of everyday practice and learning for the student in a spiritual school. The Tibetan mystics have always kept secret the nature of their studies, just like the initiates of the ancient mystery schools and the Christian mystics during the Middle Ages. I also took a vow not to reveal anything about this period of my life. All I can say is that thanks to the Tibetan teachers, I developed my psychic abilities. 15 years later, I visited Russia. Sergei was by then a grown man, and we became acquainted really for the first time.
At the time, I was old enough to reach my own conclusions about this outlandish and diabolic woman. I could tell that in her youth she had been very beautiful, but when I met her she had grown fat and was not very attractive. She paid little attention to her personal appearance and usually dressed in loose gowns. I was surprised by her great skills. She had taught herself to play the piano and offered concerts in London and Paris. Although she had never seriously studied languages, she could speak English, French, and German, as well as her mother tongue. She wrote very poetic letters, and her poems were like music. By looking straight into your eyes, she could discern truth from lie. But when she did this, she was caught up in a fantasy, and her eyes would shine brightly with a strange light. She had the most intense blue eyes I have ever seen. There was something Saturnian and somber about her, but she was also very kind and a good person.
Thank you for your kind words, dear cousin. But the more I listen to you, the less I recognize myself. All this is so inconsequential. We don't have a lot of time to talk now about my eyes or about my gowns. Instead, let's talk about the mystery. That mystery that lies behind the curtain of what we call reality.
The Bible says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form, and void and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, Let there be light. And there was light. And God said, Let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years." An ancient Chinese book says, "The great Tao has no physical form, but it is the source of all form under heaven and earth. The great Tao has no passions, but it is what keeps the sun and the moon in motion. The great Tao has no name, but is the essence of all growth and all salvation."
Но оно вызывает рост и сохраняет все сущее.
The Indian Veda says, "In the beginning nothing existed, nor did not exist, neither the air nor the sky above. What was it that moved here and there? Where was it, and where was it going? Under whose protection? What is it that fills the great abyss? There was neither death nor immortality. There was no day and no night. There was only the one breath, and there was nothing except or beyond the breath." The Bible says, "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And they said, Go and let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach to the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad on the face of the earth. And the Lord came down to see the city, and the tower which the children of man build. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. Let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech."
It seemed to me that all religions must have one common origin, one common source. Science denies such a notion. Science talks about the ignorance of primitive peoples and their rituals of idolatry. But can all the highest hopes and aspirations of humanity be traced back to the beliefs of primitive man? Is it possible that the great leaders, martyrs, and heroes of history fought and perished because they misunderstood the laws of the universe? Because they failed to see that all creeds have the same source? Gradually, I began to uncover the secret doctrine, which is the basis of all spiritual teachings. But my understanding was far from complete. The study of the sacred texts of the East provided me with the key. Thanks to the isolation of the Himalayas, the coding of the ancient teachings, and the lack of interest among Europeans in accepting and understanding the esoteric world, the secret doctrines were protected. Those secret teachings cannot be completely revealed. Part of them will always need to be safeguarded from those who are ignorant. But one thing is clear. Ancient knowledge has fed the spiritual hunger of mankind through the ages. The similarities in religious doctrines point to a common origin, to a great brotherhood of teachers who guide our evolution. They protect the truth so it won't be violated. But from time to time, when it has been necessary for the benefit of mankind, the truth has been revealed. These masters have served as the spiritual teachers and healers for our planet. Ancient legends, the ruins of temples and sacred sites give testimony to their existence. But all this is of no value to the unlearned and ignorant. The sacred books of the East are the best proof of the greatness of those masters who have devoted themselves to the benefit of mankind. These ancient texts contain knowledge about God, the universe, and man. They are all the same in their essence, although they are different in their form. They all point to a common origin, the ancient divine wisdom. The knowledge of divine wisdom. That is what we call theosophy. It is the foundation upon which all religions of the world are built. It is the nurturing spring that is the source of all of mankind's most heartfelt and noble aspirations. It is the wisdom that confirms our hopes for the future and brings us to our highest trust in God. Well, Vera, the time has come to meet this man who slandered and destroyed my name. Let God be our judge, even after our death. You know how painful it has been for me to have such a blemish on my name.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Всеволод Sergeyevich Solovyov. The philosopher Vladimir Solovyov was my younger brother. He never met Madame Blavatsky, never had any contact with her, so he always resented it when people denounced and reproached him for his assaults on her. It was I, not him. My association with Madame Blavatsky dates back to 1884. in Paris, when I responded to an announcement in a newspaper which read, "For those interested in theosophy, Madame Blavatsky has returned to Europe," and it gave her address. By then, I had heard a lot about the wonders and miracles she performed. I wanted to become acquainted with my outstanding countrywoman. So, I went to her house to meet her. The door was opened by a Hindu man. In the room I found a heavy-set woman, sitting at a desk writing something and smoking a cigarette. She looked up at me, and I saw her beautiful turquoise eyes. Her manner of speaking was distinctly Russian, with the charm and humor common among the people of the Russian provinces. I asked her how long she was planning to stay in Paris, and her reply was, "My master will tell me." And I heard the sounds of silver bells. From that very first meeting, I felt her influence on me. I was charmed by her. I can only explain my subsequent contacts with her on the basis of hypnosis and the extraordinary psychic pressure that I was subjected to. Today, I am totally against all that theosophical heresy, and I warn everyone who feels inclined to study anything about theosophy or its founder to be extremely careful. Everything about it is a lie, a deception, a fraud.
Mr. Solovyov had contact with my sister during a few weeks in Paris, a couple of weeks in Nuremberg, and a few days in Aberfield. There was no Theosophical Society in existence in Europe at the time, and no translations of Theosophical literature into Russian. So Mr. Solovyov could not possibly have read anything about her philosophy because he did not speak English, as he admitted to us himself. Then, how could this man judge a woman about whom he knew so little, and even less about her cause and what she stood for?
I had reason for telling you that I spoke no English. I wanted to be able to listen and spy on everything that took place in her house. I had to play the friend of Madame Blavatsky in order to gather the necessary facts for my future denunciations. I had some suspicions about her even at that time. For example, I suspected the story about Madame Blavatsky's teacher, a certain Mahatma Moria. Once, after I returned to my home from one of my visits to Helena Petrovna, I felt very tired and had to lay in bed to rest for a while. Suddenly I opened my eyes and saw a man sitting in front of me. He looked like an Indian and had beautiful but sad black eyes which looked straight at me. I had the impression that this man was absolutely real, not a spirit or a ghost. The visit lasted for some time, and we engaged in a lengthy conversation, at the end of which Mahatma told me, "Tomorrow Madame Blavatsky will prove to you my reality." Then he disappeared.
The letter he left you saying, "I was here, but who can open the eyes of those who do not want to see?"
That was no proof. You simply hypnotized me. She filled me with false ideas. Maybe I was overly enthusiastic and mistaken. I was too young at the time. But anyway, I can prove that everything she did were deceptions and simple hypnotic practices.
How can you prove it? What about the experiment with the psychic reading my sister did of that letter? You described it in an article in Rebus magazine. You wrote yourself that everything concerning such phenomena was absolutely real, that there were no lies in it. You wrote, "I checked everything myself. Tricks and lies would have been impossible." Quite frankly, I am very surprised with Solovyov's wish to forget everything about Madame Blavatsky, as he said. Why didn't he? In fact, why didn't he do so? Who prevented him from doing so? Why did he go on to publish his book in which he called my sister the greatest liar and trickster of our century? And why did he publish his book after my sister's death, when he was sure that she could do nothing to protect her name? How can a man who was allegedly hypnotized presume to be a good judge of anything? Perhaps now he is being hypnotized by somebody else. If he is indeed Such a sensitive person, and so easily influenced by everyone around him. How can we distinguish in his writings when he is telling the truth or when he is being fooled under hypnosis?
Vera Petrovna, my dear, why are you so anxious? Your sister is not such a simple person that she can't protect herself without your help. By the way, I would like to add that I solved the mystery of the silver bell. Once, when I was getting ready to leave Helena Petrovna's house and was putting on my coat in her lobby, Madame Blavatsky, who was standing near me, clumsily dropped something on the floor. I picked it up and, smiling, handed it back to her. It was a pretty silver object of oriental craftsmanship. All the guests present noticed that she was quite embarrassed by the incident.
What a strange man, totally obsessed with this petty matter of the silver bell. How many times had he asked me to teach him how to perform miracles and wonders, how I produced music out of thin air. Simple. I wave my hand and there is music. It is impossible to teach those kinds of things. How could I teach him? Had he been able to learn from all my experiences in India, perhaps he would have been able to do such things.
Stop, student. One more word. When you find in your heart divine compassion, you discover the law of the universe, the essence of internal harmony, the soul of the world, the light of truth and eternal love. When you walk the path of nature, your soul is transformed into perfect compassion. Those who accept Theosophy are inspired by a constant search for divine wisdom and God's kingdom within. The essence of Theosophy is the search for truth and the belief in a universal brotherhood, belief in the Absolute, in God as the source of all that is visible and invisible, the source of everything that exists, and to which all things are returning. Theosophy is the belief in the eternal law of absolute love, compassion, and mercy. It teaches the acceptance of the laws of karma and reincarnation. Theosophy believes in the evolution of the immortal and eternal nature of man, influenced by the spiritual soul of the world and divine law.
He pestered Helena Petrovna to share her knowledge with him. He wanted so much to return to Russia as a great magician, just as he described in his novel Magus. But Helena Petrovna often said that those who paid such eager attention to astral flights and letters of Mahatmas were like small crawling worms on the shoes of a well-dressed man.
Oh yes, Vera Petrovna. So psychic phenomena does not mean anything. It's trifle. But the teaching of Theosophy, that's what's all important. That was the important thing, wasn't it? Come on now. Your sister discredited the Christian church and planted ideas of primitive idolatry in people's minds. She mixed everything together and called this mixture a new religion. Your greatly respected sister created confusion in the minds of the Christian Orthodox. And you, a clever and intelligent woman, asked me to exonerate her?
It was Mr. Solovyov who tried to frighten the Orthodox Christians. As it happens, I never betrayed the Orthodox Church and was never afraid to put a cross on my chest or enter the church, as was the case with one certain acquaintance. Now, Mr. Solovyov, we found your weakness. Let me remind you of one of your memorable walks through Paris. It seems to me that we can talk about it openly now, without confusion. It was Tuesday, June 5th. We had a long walk with Mr. Solovyov. He told me that in his childhood, he used to fly above the trees. He remembered it very well. What an enthralling fantasy. Quite unbelievable. Then we came across a Russian church, a very beautiful structure. It was strange that Mr. Solovyov did not want to enter it, not for anything in the world. I asked him why, but he gave me no explanation. My sister wrote about Theosophy, not about a new religion, but it is a profound philosophy that encompasses all the ancient creeds. Regarding my sister's view about Orthodox religion, they were very well known to Mr. Solovyov. And if he has forgotten, perhaps I can remind him.
That's enough, Vera. You have been insulted enough by this man, because of me. It is true that you felt that you needed to protect me when I couldn't do so myself, but you had to face so many problems because of the gossip that this man generated. For 15 years I worked for the benefit of mankind. I tried to amend my sins, and what of it? Here I am, covered with mud, and who did this? Solovyov, the great sinner. He was the one who flung the first stone at me. He betrayed me, just like a Judas. Listen, Vera, this is the honest truth. I am not a Christian nor an Orthodox, but I believe in life beyond the grave, the last judgment and retribution. The ideal of Christ is clearer to me every day, and I have never, and will never, express myself against the Russian Orthodox Church. You could hang me, and I still would not do it. I love my Russia. All my thoughts are with it. I am homesick for my country. I could give my soul in slavery for 10,000 years for my country. I am being honest. It's the truth, Vera. I have shared with you all the pain there is in my heart and soul. I remember that I once told you that I would not die leaving my name covered with mud. But it might be that my sins were too grave. The delusions of our past will lead us to wisdom in the future. My work will not be accepted until the 20th century.
सकलप्रदात्रे नमः ॐ भक्ताघसम्भेदन दृष्टिवज्राय नमः ॐ क्षमासुरेन्द्राय नमः ॐ हरिपाद कञ्जनिषेवणालब्ध समस्तसम्पदे नमः ॐ देवस्वभावाय नमः ॐ दिविजद्रुमाय नमः ॐ इष्टप्रदाय नमः ॐ भव्यस्वरूपाय नमः ॐ भवदुःखतूल संघाग्निचर्याय नमः ॐ सुखधैर्यशालिने नमः ॐ समस्तदुष्टग्रह निग्रहेशाय नमः ॐ दुरत्ययोपप्लवसिन्धुसेतवे नमः ॐ निरस्तदोषाय नमः ॐ निरवध्यवेशाय नमः ॐ प्रत्यर्थिमूकध्वनिदानभाषाय नमः ॐ विद्वत्परिज्ञेय महाविशेषाय नमः ॐ वाग्वैखरी निर्जितभव्यशेषाय नमः ॐ सन्तानसम्पत्परिशुद्धभक्ति विज्ञानवाग्देह सुपाठवारिधाते